Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now today we're hot on the heels of last week's video, which is the continuation of the cutting that runs through for the lower loop. So today's video is really some preliminary work in order to work out how the overhead bridge is going to work across this cutting, which means really I have to build the hillside, which is where that hole is in the layout at the moment. Now this hillside of course is going to be a lift out section so I can gain access if need be. So let's just crack into what I've been working on with this hill section. So I've now just temporarily anchored this lift out section back in here and actually screwed it down, and I've been doing a little bit of testing on it with various locomotives and rolling stock, and everything seems to be in order. So the track severing that took place at each end has worked out reasonably well. So before I begin on the scenic area of this, I just sort of wanted to plan out how this overhead bridge is actually going to work. Now interestingly, what's actually going to happen with this overhead bridge is it's going to actually take an incline, and I have done a little bit of hunting around on the internet and have managed to find at least one stone overhead bridge that does exist that actually goes on an incline. So thankfully I know it's not impossible for such a bridge to exist. So with this anchored in here and working out what sort of shape that's going to take, it won't be a stone bridge, I'll make it a brick bridge, but I need to work out this area here. So all through here there's going to be an elevated area of a low-lying hill. Now the idea here, and it's quite sort of important I sort of find when it comes to modelling, don't want the hill to just look like it's been plonked there and not really fit into the general landscape. So the idea is for it to be relatively convincing. So my thoughts were that the hill would be quite low-lying, not a very big hill, but I've got to imagine where it used to be before things like railway infrastructure and industry took its place in the landscape and started carving it up. So my thoughts were the hill would be a curved shape like this. Originally the hill would have dropped down across this cutting and over this way, so it's got a raised area through here. Where the engine shed is going to go, that will be sort of have some partial retaining wall around it, because that would have been cut into the hill to build the engine shed, and then it would slope back off down that way towards this area here. And once again there's another deep cutting running through here, an embankment on this side, a retaining wall on that side. So the idea is that the hill may be a spur that's come out from hills that are further off in the distance. So around this edge here there will be a bit of an embankment or possibly more retaining wall, and then also on the other side the hill will actually begin to drop off here, because I do want to put in some further industrial buildings here, but it will rise up again on this side as well, as if the hill continued off into the distance. So I've started marking out some sort of general kind of plan, and it might be difficult to pick this up in the camera, but I've just pencil marked out some areas where I think this hill will actually continue to. So it's now a case of taking some measurements around this area so I can work out how much material I need to cut out. So the material I'm using to build up this hillside is a very dense foam material, and I think this is cropped up in some previous videos that I've done. It is similar to what seems to be used quite commonly in the UK as Celotex, I believe, but the only difference with this here is it doesn't have that foil laminate over the top of it. So it's very lightweight, it's really quite durable and strong, and it's easy enough to carve either with a knife or even with a hot wire. So that's what's going to be used here in this area. So I've now managed to cut out a cardboard template, and it was really a case of working out some of the dimensions and angles on a piece of paper, and then the curved area towards the back, that was a case of just getting a paper template by essentially a pencil rubbing of the track that runs behind. So it's all fitting more or less how I sort of want it to fit. So now it will be a case of using this cardboard template to cut out the first layer of the polystyrene material. And the idea with this area is it will be a lift out section, so if I do need to get into this area I can simply pop it up. So for those folks who live here in New Zealand, I bought this condensed polystyrene from Bunnings. Now they used to sell smaller sheets, 600 by 900 and I think 1200 by 900. They stopped doing that and only sold 1200 by 2400 sheets, and I was told a while back that they were phasing them out as well, so I actually ended up buying 2 full-size sheets in the event that maybe you might not be able to get this stuff any longer. So I've now marked out, I've got this cardboard template and I've now marked out on this chunk of polystyrene where I'm going to cut. So once that's done, we'll put it back on the layout and just see how it goes. So there is the polystyrene now cut out and positioned in there, and it fits quite nicely. But what I want to do is add another layer on top of this just to build the hill up a little bit further. And of course the church that we have here, we'll position this back in at some location in this area and see how it all looks. Now you see the base of the church of course follows this curve which was from the original track in here, so what I'm going to do is just position this and it will follow that curve again. So down here at the back this will be an embankment or possibly retaining wall, but I think I might make it an embankment, like a sloped embankment, which might look a bit more interesting and also not conceal the lines too much, so we still get a little bit of train views in there as well. So I'm thinking it's going to tuck in here somewhere in this position. So the road, it might go further this way a little bit. So the road's going to come up through here and then come around the side of the church, upper level. The engine shed will be sitting down here at a lower level, and then the road might continue off. Now at this point here it might elevate even more, and there may even be a further overhead road bridge here which will just simply disappear off into the back scene. So that is the plan. So I've just got a piece of card positioned in here which indicates the incline for the deck of the overhead road bridge. So it's actually going to cut in, and I'll actually cut down some of the styrene, and then it'll work its way up around the edge of this upper layer to meet the other upper section there. So it'll sort of have a gradual climb up around this corner, similar to the road that used to be there. So just using a piece of card, I thought if I put this piece of card rested up against here, this is going to give me the incline for this bridge, because I sort of want to match the incline for the road as much as possible so that it doesn't look like it's going up and down too much like a roller coaster. So we're just going to carefully mark a line . And that gives us the incline level for the bridge and also for the road. So we've now got 2 layers in here, and as I just mentioned before, this road will climb up to meet roughly that level. This part here will be cut down into the styrene a bit, and then this will just be slowly cut back. Now this is actually going to extend a bit further out, and that will slowly sort of taper down to this level, and this also here will sort of taper down at these edges. There may be a little bit of retaining wall there and along these edges here. Just depends really sort of how it's all going to look, and I can't really sort of tell that until I start carving this stuff. So this bit here, it will be tapered down towards this area here, where of course there will be a tunnel entrance, and of course there'll be retaining wall along this edge here, and there will now be an overbridge across this section of track here, which will just go into a back seam, and then these edges here I'm going to taper the styrene through to meet up with the retaining wall, which is down here at lower level. So I've now glued all the styrene panels together, and in this area here you can see the road taking a slight incline up, and this area I've just made that with a bit of 3mm MDF. I just thought it would be easier to make this incline rather than chisel it out of this styrene. So the glue that I've used for gluing the styrene together is the Sally's liquid nails, available here in New Zealand. Not sure whether it's available elsewhere around the world, but it's very high bond, and of course it doesn't dissolve the polystyrene. So I have in the past used PVA glue, and I've also come across other people on YouTube who've used PVA with polystyrene, and it does eventually dry, but it just takes an awful long time. So at the moment I've just got toolboxes and other equipment sitting on this to keep it all weighted down, and this particular glue takes 24 hours to dry, so we'll come back to this tomorrow. So it's now the next day, and I think I've given it enough an opportunity to dry, and it still probably might take a little bit of curing time, but hopefully it should be ready for a little bit of carving. Now here I've added in a wee service road that would go to where the engine shed is going to be down here, so that needs to be cut in. This is the MDF layer that runs around through there, and it's finished flush with the foam, and then that will meet the overhead bridge down there. So we'll just get into this and see how this goes in terms of carving it into some form of hill shape. So we've now got the polystyrene hill form all shaped up and in situ, and I've also placed the church and the engine shed in place roughly where they're going to be. So the next step from here will be to run over the entire polystyrene surface with a bit of putty. Now the putty I use is just a cheap alternative basically to sculptor mould, which I get from the local hardware store, and that's basically going to tidy up areas through here and smooth out any indentations and holes and so forth in the polystyrene. So we can now work out the exact proportions for this overhead bridge now that we have the approaching road from this side, and that of course will allow us to continue on with the construction of this cutting through here and finishing off some of the Metcalf retaining wall. And also I will be ballasting and weathering the track before I fix in place the overhead bridge, and then of course there will also be tunnel portals to build at both ends, and then finally lots and lots of scenic treatments. So there we have the hill section now more or less in place. It's certainly at a stage that I can now work out the overhead bridge, and of course now another overhead bridge as well across the upper level of track. So I think in the next video in this series I will return back to focus on the actual cutting itself so that we can build the overhead bridge, build up the remaining bits of retaining wall, plus also the tunnel entrances, get some ballasting done on the track and some weathering done on that track as well, and actually slowly start to build up the cutting through on the lower loop and finish off that whole section with some nice scenics and a disused section of track. And then I think following on from when that's complete, I will return back to the hill section. We'll do some puttying or plastering over the polystyrene substrate and start working on an overhead bridge for the upper level of track as well. So I certainly hope you've enjoyed today's video and that's given you some hints or inspiration for your layouts as well. I will sign off for now. Do take care everyone, look after yourselves. Also please don't forget to subscribe and like, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.